So, good evening. Tonight is Friday night, February 13th, and it is about 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time here in Kansas City, and I haven't really checked in here in quite some time. For tonight's topic, I guess I want to just briefly touch the Ukraine and Iran, as those are two, pretty important issues, and they don't seem to be going away. That's one thing. But at first, I would like to say Happy New Year, even though we're almost in the middle of February, because I haven't gotten to it to make a video. For all of those viewers who are waiting for the second video on the Prince Albrecht Palais, that is still in the works. I kind of took a break because I am studying these almost 260, 300 pages of the tax audits for several years. And there's a lot of details in these tax audits. And like the saying goes, is the devil is in the details. And so I'm studying them, and I have to go back. And, this is not one of my favorite literature to read, is tax audits, which happened nearly 90, 80, 90, 100 years ago because of something they did or didn't do, my ancestors, and they got themselves more or less into hot water, but we will get there. The other thing is why I'm getting in this, because they also evaluated all the dealings of the trust, of the family trust, and the way it was then divided. And that actually started much earlier than I actually knew. That started already in 1921. So this is just some detail. But it is later on important actually to determine of who actually owned what at what point and how they were involved in the decision-making process. That is just what kind of complicated the whole thing a little bit more. And I may have to break down this whole video part, and rather in two parts, but probably over 3 or 4 parts, where we're basically looking at the property itself and who owned the property and who owned what part of the property, because there is a lot of issues associated to it which go into today, actually, in terms of property rights on the property itself of the Prince Albrecht Palais parcel, or the entire city block over there, on how this was divided. And then we would have to really take a closer look on the family, alliances or support of the Nazi Party and the involvement on different levels there, of what part of my immediate family was more involved or not involved, and that sort of thing, without pointing any fingers and say Uncle so-and-so was more involved than Uncle so-and-so. That is not really the mission here, is not to put the blame on it and say they were more right-wing than the other one, but just the constellation of all of the stuff and who supported what actually at that time there, and who was involved with what. That is a full video segment we're gonna make on that as a part of it. And then would be the last segment would be more like then the aftermath after 1945, primarily what my grandfather had to deal with in getting the whole area cleaned off from the ruins. And that was a completely separate story there too, with the city of West Berlin then at that point. So we're going to break this down in these 3 segments, and we're going to have a total of 4 segments. Otherwise, the video is going to be just too long for that. On the cooking channel here, the 1838 cookbook, I had announced actually on that channel that I wanted to make some videos during December, the pre-season for Christmas, to make some recipes there. But I did not get to this, and there were multiple reasons. A lot of the stuff was work-related. I do have to work for a living. I'm not in a position, unfortunately, where I have money coming in here left, right, and center out of, some trust funds and this and the other thing. and I can do YouTube videos all day long. I have a business to run, and I have a lot of commitments in my businesses to my customers to take care of this, what we needed to take care of. And I'm pretty happy with my business because we're quite busy, and I have a lot of interesting customers, a wide variety of activity going on there, and these are interesting times. And that was the second part of this, was is I had to get started with AI, looking more into this of what I may want to use for my business. And then out of interest is primarily on Instagram, because that is a much bigger platform for advertising, is on how AI is going to, infiltrate and change the videos or posts in general on primarily Instagram, then Facebook, and then YouTube, and TikTok probably being on top of it in terms of artificially created content. How difficult this will be actually for the average viewer to actually separate this of what is AI created, because some of the stuff is extremely good, and it is very, very difficult even for a trained eye, someone who works with this like I do now with AI, from a real made video. On YouTube, you won't see it too much because the time it takes to create the AI videos, especially AI content videos, are very time consuming. Even though the AI system creates it, the files become very large, and so it becomes very difficult to do a long video like here for YouTube, where you go over this, where you do this over several minutes. And so this was part of it where I actually got involved, or where I involved myself in some incognito channels I got there on Instagram, trying to figure out in which way this is all going to move. I believe that YouTube, as we know it right now, is going to be obsolete in an X amount of tens or hundreds of months from now, so a few more years of this. But you will see the quality and the type of content changing, and the production of the content being created by AI. As the technology progresses, we will see AI generated longer type of movies, which will deal with whatever topics there are, and they will be here posted on YouTube, not by me, but by people who are getting heavily into this, and they will then compete for the advertising dollars. And it is probably easier for a AI system, from what I've gathered now, to actually understand hashtags and that sort of stuff, and the AI algorithms YouTube or Instagram uses to provide content specifically for their algorithms, which means you score higher, you get more viewership and everything else. And here's where AI is going to heavily displace regular made content. You can see already on my channel here that this content I have produced over the last few years with the algorithms YouTube employs is not very suitable for their algorithms. The topics, the length of the videos, the unedited, narrated type of videos, things which I'm posting here, which do not have changing scenes and everything else. Now, we have to understand is that YouTube, as well as the other social media sites, are actually using AI, and they're evaluating the content while you're uploading it. So once the video has uploaded, and YouTube, for instance, processes it in the different video formats or resolutions, in that process itself, the content itself is being evaluated. And YouTube has been employing here AI, which gives you then the ability to summarize the video, underneath in the comment section in the description of the video. As a viewer, rather than reading the entire transcript, you can just click on, at least on the American or English speaking YouTube version, where you can click on it. It gives you an AI summary of what I said, for instance, in a half an hour video. You're going to get this compressed into 3 paragraphs, basically, at the very most, probably less than 500 words. And so this is all the stuff what we're seeing. So when AI processes this, they also evaluate this, and then they look at the patterns of what the YouTube viewer has, and from there they're trying to match this up, and you're either going to get a bigger exposure if it comes to their feed in the main channel presented to each viewer, or you get less. And Googling, on my car channel, a lot of the traffic I get to that site or to that channel is through Google, because people are actively actually searching on Google or Bing or other search engines particular questions about that particular car and how to repair them. So, and that's how they wind up on my channel, because Google primarily matches them up already in their search engine on the Google website to get to the content I got. So I got certain videos which got a lot of views, and that was primarily driven through the Google search engines rather than YouTube search engines. So that's how a lot of people wind up on my car channel, and we're working our way slowly to 5,000 subscribers there. I think we're at 4,100 or 4,200, and probably by the end of this year we're gonna go over the 5,000 mark. That was because it's a educational website. So this is kind of all of the stuff I just wanted to throw in here for the moment of what I have been working on, what is going on. And then the other thing is we had that cold temperature in Kansas City, and I had health-wise, in the last week or 2 weeks, I have been kind of a little bit up and down from that cold weather. I'm not used to that. Well, I am used. Excuse me. I am used to it, but at age it affects you differently than when you're young. You can handle the cold easier. It's like I'm getting at an age now where I should be moving towards warmer climates, to say this at least. Now, let's get back to, let's touch on Iran first. And without criticizing President Trump or the Trump administration, is in the beginning here, when this kind of started and they cut the internet out, they blocked out the Iranian government, there was the appeal to Starlink and Elon Musk, and they kind of got some stuff going, and then Trump made certain statements that they would be not left alone and all of the stuff. And at this point now, what we got is, we know it didn't happen. The U.S. military said they didn't have enough firepower to intervene and support the demonstrators there. And we don't know yet exactly on how many hundreds of thousands of demonstrators were actually killed in this by the Iranian government. But this is a very dangerous, undertaking there. That's a dance on eggshells, so to speak. If you post on social media comments that you are supporting a certain group or segment in a country where there is a revolution, but yet you can't really support any of this stuff, and then you tell these people help is on the way, and we're still waiting for the military to get ready over there because they're too thinly stretched to have a global dominance as President Trump envisions this to be in terms of military equipment primarily. So we will see how this is going to play out in terms of credibility and all of this stuff. The United States has definitely changed, and Friedrich Merz made this today a topic of a speech in Munich in terms of how Europe has to basically decouple from the United States and become more active. The United States has said this for a long time, but apparently it has taken that long for this to sink in, and this kind of gets us to the Ukraine war here in a minute. But all of this stuff is militarily executed quite well, but from an administrative point, there's a lot of things to be desired. And some of the stuff is, of course, understandable when we say Trump doesn't want a regime change in these countries, like what we had with Venezuela. Now you get the head removed, but the body and the tail is still there. And no one really knows now what to do and what not to do. The political opponents are still being prosecuted over there because the entire justice system is still the former leader who is now in Brooklyn in a federal jailhouse, basically. This is how crazy this whole stuff is. And you have a similar situation now in Iran, where instead of helping the demonstrators, Trump is negotiating with Iran now about their nuclear plans or their nuclear goals, whatever the case might be. So not only do we have now the Iranian government still in place, but we also have not overthrown them, but we're also now talking about the resumption of some form of nuclear program in Iran to begin with or without Israel. And of course, there's a lot of stuff at stake. So nothing has really moved in any particular direction. The only thing which is somewhat good seems to be at least the peace we have at the moment in Gaza, and that is good. But the Palestinian people will have to understand that if they want a future, they need to get rid of Hamas and anything that is even like Hamas within their own people, because otherwise this will never come to a peace over there. If you get that kind of political leadership, and that is a job of the Palestinian people. And if the Palestinian people really want peace, they need to get rid of this kind of stuff. No matter if it's now Hamas, Hezbollah, or whatever the case might be, or whatever there might come, anything which is similar in this direction is basically unacceptable and not very conducive to the peace in that entire region. That is a reality. Now, back to the Ukraine war. Today, and this is something, we're coming up on the 4th anniversary, 4 years of this war, on February 24th. Today's the 13th, so this is 9 more days. A little bit less than a week. And the war today has gone on between the Russian Federation and Ukraine for 1,450 days. Now, I just want to give you an idea on how bad this actually is to get this in a perspective. Adolf Hitler started the Operation Barbarossa, which was the opening and declaration of war of the German Reich, the Third Reich, with the Soviet Union. Not just Russia, but the Soviet Union. And that started on June 22nd, 1941, and it pretty much lasted until May 9th, 1945. That was 1,418 days where you had millions of German Wehrmacht soldiers march all the way towards Moscow and Stalingrad and the Baltic states and everywhere. And the main battleground in this was the Ukraine for most of that part, until the Red Army had pushed the Wehrmacht out of the Ukrainian territory, which I think happened around late 1944, somewhere around there, in that range, fall, winter of 1944. So they were there for almost 3 years in the Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainians and the Russians have effectively fought now 32 days more than what the Soviet Union fought with the Wehrmacht in that time. And by the time we're going to have the 4th year anniversary on February 24th of this year, this is going to be 41 days. Longer than the beginning of the war between the Third Reich and the Soviet Union until it ended. And that is pretty shocking if you ask me, because the scale of devastation from World War II in that area, especially in the Ukraine and in the adjourned Russian territories there, Russian areas towards Moscow and Stalingrad and all of that stuff. And then you had Belarus and you had the Baltic states. Um, and you're looking at this today, what we got here, you would never have thought that that area of Europe would ever get involved in another war again. And apparently, Russia is not capable of fighting the Ukrainians the same way the Soviet Union was capable of fighting the Wehrmacht. And we're looking at a lot more people, a lot more equipment, and everything else. So it is unbelievable that we have this experience. And here again, too, is the we can see the stalemate we're having. Yes, Russia has gained territory, and Russia has done, gained something, but they have still not occupied the Ukraine. In 1944, the Red Army had pushed the Wehrmacht out of the Ukraine into parts in Poland and into Silesia, Upper Silesia, all of this, until it finally went over to what we know today as Eastern Germany, the eastern states of Germany, in today's Germany, and Berlin. And by April, May of 1945, the Russian Red Army was in the process of surrounding, encircling Berlin, which fell then on May 8th. That was the end of it. And here, in 4 years, they haven't even gone to Kiev yet, the Russians. I mean, this is the relationship. Is exactly the same area, is the same type of troop movements, the same battlegrounds is what we had from 1941 until about the middle end of 1944 in the Ukraine. Same area. This time the Ukrainians versus the Russians versus the Ukrainians. So this is what we're looking at, and on how this is going to get concluded, I have no clue. Apparently, after 4 years, the Russian Federation is not capable of overpowering the Ukrainian government. And as long as this keeps going on, and there's more financial help, especially the Ukraine is getting now, from the West in order to build their own weapon system, their own industrial military complex, is more unlikely this is going to get that the Russians are going to succeed, because they're basically in the process of bleeding dry. From a human point of view, with the soldiers they have lost and they are losing, the young people, unfortunately, it's a very sad story, this whole thing. And you're looking at this and the weapons production. I mean, they are spending now, I think the overall spending has come up to 10%, 15% of their budget, of the Duma's budget in terms of defense spending. But this is only the military cost. The overall restructuring of the economy over there into a war economy is under full way. It's under full way in Russia. And so things which were actually not really meant to be for military use is starting to be repurposed and that sort of thing. So there's still a lot of things happening, and we will have to wait and see on how this is going to go. But this is some food for thought, which I thought about today, on how significantly different the two wars are, even though they're happening in the same area, in the same region, on the same territory, on the same land, as, from 41 to 45, as it does now since 22, but with very different outcomes. in interactions and the whole military operational stuff in there. Yeah, that is something I got to think about it. We're living in a different world. We're living in a world. People say this is like the 1920s, protectionism, and you have nationalism emerging. There's new anti-Semitism emerging everywhere, and those things. It is somewhat the same, and it is not the same. Europe is not the same today as it was then in the 1920s, where it was divided, and there was a lot of tensions, national tensions in these different countries as the aftermath of World War One with settlement of regions. I just want to mention the Upper Silesia, which became Polish, which was German before. You had the trade between Germany and the Soviet Union over Eastern Polish territory, which was Polish, became then Soviet, and that sort of stuff. And that led then, all of these things were underlying in the making of World War II. And we don't have any of that at the moment, which is good. So it is the same and it is not the same, if you know what I mean. So we might be comparing apples with bananas, but that doesn't mean we need to let our guards down. On the other hand, we're probably further away from a world war rather than more emerging regional conflicts. The Ukraine is not a world war. It is a regional conflict between two countries, the Russian Federation and Ukraine. And so we have to look at this. There's different, issues, underlying issues involved in this, of that what we had in the 1920s, which led to the rise of Adolf Hitler. And the AfD, for instance, in Germany, should be of a concern, but we're not dealing with bona fide Nazis here of the caliber of Hitler or Goebbels or Goering or any of these people. They had, or Eichmann or Himmler or Heydrich or any of these people. That is not the case, so we're not there yet. And I hope we're not going to get there, because this is not something we want to repeat at any cost. Yeah, that was just my thoughts here. I will let you know here. You can expect the Prince Albrecht Palais videos to eventually come out this year. And like I said, it's going to be 3 parts to it rather than one big part. We're going to make 3 smaller parts this way that is easier to watch. And I will then group them together when they're all finished and done in a playlist. So for the interested viewer who wants to see all of them, they can go there. This video turned out now 30 minutes already too. This is not very difficult to get 15 or 30 minutes in. As more as you cut down and you cut things out, as more you compress this, as more difficult it actually becomes to kind of absorb a lot of information. This is something I found. So when you kind of slow the flow of information a little bit down in the video, then it is easier to watch, and it is easier to kind of sink in. And with that, you have a great evening, and I will be checking in. You have a good night.